Hi everybody, this John Kaplis here, and thanks for joining me and watching this short video where I'm going to talk about how you can create a fine art fireworks image through some blending methods that I like to use. So let's get started. And the first thing I just want to mention is, what makes a good fireworks image? And so that's something we should be thinking about creatively. You need a interesting foreground that's going to anchor the image. I think you want some color in the sky. This one's a little lighter than I normally do, but I'd like to have just a hint of blue in the sky. And these fireworks were going off towards right at the end of twilight, so there's actually even a little bit of the residual sunset going on, which I was fine with. I think it's kind of interesting. And then the last thing you want is an interesting set of fireworks bursts going off, and you want to definitely have a series that is interesting and has the colors that you want, and it makes a complete image. So I've used this process on different types of settings, and it seems to work pretty well overall. On the left here were some fireworks down on the National Mall. On the right here was some fireworks at Mount Vernon, where I'm using this method to blend the fireworks with the foreground in each case. I will say the ones that have the brighter foregrounds that are lit up, you have to be more precise in your framing because it's harder to move fireworks around later on, because then you'd also be moving these well-lit objects around, and they're not going to line up with your background. So you need to be pretty precise if you have a well-lit foreground in your image. If you're, here is another fireworks shot over the Manassas train station where they shoot the fireworks off in the field behind, over by the school. This last series I did was fireworks over the sunflowers at Burnside Farm. And for here, because there really was nothing well lit in the foreground, you can be a little less precise about your framing because you can then make adjustments afterwards in editing with the fireworks themselves. But let's go ahead and get started on how we go about capturing images to make a fireworks blended image. And so there's a certain way you would do this. And the first thing you need to do is you need to create a background layer. So you need to capture the material for the background layer before the fireworks show ever starts. And so you got to frame this up, find your composition that you want, make sure you leave enough sky for the bursts that you're going to be shooting later on, and then you want to get something that's going to have some color in the sky and something that's going to have good detail for the foreground. And the way you do that, let me show you here, is one of two ways. You can either do two images and blend them. So like you could do a foreground shot like this where everything is well lit, and then do a sky shot later on before the fireworks start going off, which has a nice dark sky, and then you could blend those two images to create a base layer that would look something like this. Or you can go for an exposure that's kind of in the middle, that still has a little bit of light on the foreground, but the sky's already started to get dark. In this case, I actually used this one. And while you wouldn't think there's enough here to have a good foreground, there actually is. Photoshop is really good these days, or the editing softwares are really good about recovering stuff in the shadows. And so I was able to edit this image to come up with this base layer right here. Let's go back to our capture process. And so Then the part about capturing the fireworks burst. So I think the biggest thing is you don't want to overexpose your fireworks. If you blow out the highlights in the fireworks, that's something you're not going to be able to really work with then. And so as a result, you want to go with some settings that are like a low ISO 100, and then your f-stop, your aperture, I like around f13 to f16. But you could go with f8, which actually might give you a bit more detail, and the streaks are going to be a bit fatter. But you can experiment with f-stops, and the bigger your aperture, the shorter your exposure times are going to be able to be, and the greater the risk of overexposing those fireworks. So I like a smaller aperture, and the way you would deal with your shutter speed is you use bulb mode and you use a cable release, and then you press the shutter as the fireworks start to go up from the launch point, and when you get 3, 4, 5 fireworks bursting in the sky that kind of fill your frame that you like, then you just you let off your shutter. And this could be anywhere from 2 seconds for a really rapid set of fireworks to maybe 7 or 8 seconds to 15 to 20 seconds where they're kind of infrequent and they're kind of spaced out, and those are still going to look good when they're all on one frame. So definitely there's a trick to capturing the raw material that you're going to use later on for the blending. So as you're editing your background layer, as we said, you're going to take that background and you're going to open it up in your editing software. I like to use Adobe Camera Raw, but you can use Lightroom. They do the same thing. I would select the sky, and I would make the adjustments to the sky. I would darken it up, maybe, and then I would take that selection and tell it to duplicate it and invert it, which is going to then select the foreground, and then I would brighten up that foreground. I would boost the shadows, and then I would add some saturation. I would add some clarity and texture to the foreground. I would sharpen the foreground, and then I would put the whole thing through a noise reduction software before I ever used it as the background for the blending process. Alright, so now that we have a background that we like, we can start editing our fireworks images. So here on the left you'll see one of the fireworks images I took, and as you can see it's very dim and a little dark, and that's on purpose really. So then what you would want to do is probably brighten the image up a little bit to make the rest of the fireworks burst kind of show up more prominently, and then lower the highlights, which will do a couple things. It'll kind of lower the brighter areas of the fireworks that maybe are a little bright, brighter than you want, and then it will also kind of restore some of the color to the rest of the fireworks in the sky. The other thing you could do is you could selectively select the fireworks area and then raise the shadows there a bit, which will also help bring out some of these more darker areas of the fireworks exposure. Then I would add saturation, because the fireworks tend to get a little washed out, and then I'd add some clarity and maybe even sharpen the fireworks bursts a bit, and then I think you should be good to go with that. And so, I mean, after applying all those types of adjustments, my image looked like this over here. And so now I have an edited fireworks burst, and I have an edited background, and I'm going to open both of those up into Photoshop, and we're going to blend them. And so this is kind of, you've got your background, and then you've got your fireworks, and we're gonna blend them to try and get something like this. And so I'm gonna go ahead and demonstrate that for you now. So let's go to Photoshop. And so here you have the background layer that I opened up, and then here's our fireworks layer that I opened up. And so we're going to go ahead and select. We're going to select the fireworks image by going Select All or Control A if you have Windows, and then I'm going to go over to Edit, and I'm going to copy or Control C, and then I'm going to go back to the base background, and I'm going to do a Control V or Edit Paste. And so as you can see, what that did is it pasted the fireworks layer on top of the background that has your foreground and sky. And so if you have a brightly lit foreground, then what you would want to do is select both of these, and you would want to do a edit auto align layers. But since we don't have a brightly lit foreground that I need to make sure is tightly matched up, I'm not going to do that. And now let's talk about how we would blend these two. So right above, if you have the fireworks layer selected, right above that you'll see a little box that says normal, and this is the blend mode. And so we're going to change this blend mode from normal to lighten. And what that does is it takes any kind of anything that's brighter in the fireworks layer than is in the background underneath it, and it makes it to show through. And so as you can see, all this bright areas of fireworks is brighter than the dark sky underneath it, so it shows up. Unfortunately, there's some other stuff that showed up in our image from the fireworks layer that we don't want, so I'm going to show you how to fix that in just a second. But before we do that, the next step, for me anyway, is to convert this fireworks layer into a smart object. So you do that by right-clicking on the selected layer, and then you right-click and then convert to smart object here, and you select that. All right, and now as you can see, it's just changed it and put a little icon over the top. So the reason you convert it to a smart object is that allows you to adjust the positioning and size of the layer on top. And so we're going to go to Edit, Transform, and Scale, and select that. And now you'll see this little framing thing up on top, and what that allows you to do is you can click and then drag to move this thing around and reposition it however you want, or you can also resize it to the size that you want for the bursts. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to our original size for the moment, and then I'm going to reposition it so that the fireworks are coming up in the since you can see where the fireworks are being launched in this layer, I'm going to position that so it's now on the background, but about where it was supposed to be. And I actually kind of like the size of the bursts the way they are, so I'm going to leave that like that. And I'm just going to go ahead and select it. And now, as you can see, the last thing you probably need to do here is there's stuff that came through on the fireworks layer onto the background that we don't like. Here's some flowers that somebody was shining a light on because they were trying to light their foreground with a flashlight during their image. And then there was also some sky area that was brighter because there was smoke here and it was reflecting the light from the burst. So we're going to go ahead and remove this stuff very easily. And so it's easier to fix this in post than it is to get mad at somebody for shining a flashlight on your flowers, because you're not really going to be using the flowers at the time of the fireworks burst. You're going to be using the flowers you took earlier. And so you would apply a mask to this, a layer mask to this fireworks layer. So you go down and hit that. So now you have that mask, and you're going to go over and you're going to select your paintbrush and select the colors black, and then we're going to paint black on the mask here, where over things we don't want to show up from the fireworks layer. So as you can see, we're going to get rid of all this stuff here that was things we didn't want that showed up and came through on our image. And so as you can see, you get a much cleaner foreground now, and we're getting rid of a lot of this smoke that kind of we didn't want. And you got to be careful when you're masking, because sometimes this stuff, you won't see it on your computer very much, but it will show up in a print. And so you got to make sure your masking for your blend is very clean. And so I'm getting rid of this stuff here that I didn't want. And I'm doing this a little quicker than I would probably in real life, because it's a video I'm doing here for you. But so now you would have you can see your launch point, you can see good clarity in your bursts, and your foreground looks pretty good. And now there's a way to tell if you were able to get a pretty clean mask that you were doing down here. If you look here, you can see there's some white areas, which tells me I missed a few spots. So the easiest way to figure that out is to alt click on this, and as you can see, that gives you that. And now you can just clean up those areas that you missed, and that's what I'm doing here. I'm just cleaning up, because I know there was nothing here that I really wanted to show up in this image. And so I'm going to clean all these areas up here real quick. And then this area in the middle is the launch point, so I'm probably going to leave that alone. And just click on this image again, and there you can see you've got a really clean blend, where you got a nice foreground that's well lit but not too bright, so that it looks like it's daytime. You've got some nice color in the sky, and you've got some nice really nice blue bursts in the sky as well. And if you wanted to do further adjustments, say you didn't like it, you can go back up, because this is still a smart layer. You can go back up to transform and scale, and then you can do any further adjustments you want to this, which I'm not gonna make any more adjustments, but just to point out that you can always go back and do that again. And there you have it. You have a nice blended fireworks image. I hope you enjoyed this, and you give it a try sometime. Thanks for watching. Bye.